Hey AP World. First of all, welcome to your first hurricane day. We're going to begin instruction here in just a second. So today at 5 o'clock, we're going to know if we have school tomorrow. If you look outside, it looks pretty gorgeous out, maybe a little cloudy, but I'm thinking tomorrow we'll be together, which is great news for us because week 5 is writing week. So we need to be together because we need to be writing. So hopefully tonight, we get the news we want that we're testing tomorrow, and that way Thursday we can start writing. Well, I know writing doesn't sound very exciting, but we need to get that practice in. So hopefully we're together tomorrow. If we're together tomorrow, you have a test on Americas, India, and China. We started this lecture on Thursday, so if you were not in school on Thursday, you definitely need to watch my lecture from Thursday. I'm going to finish the lecture here today. If you did your focus and your pieces this week, you should be in a really good spot. Now, please keep in mind that with your lecture, it is really important that you are doing your job as well. And I am going to work really hard today to get you prepared for tomorrow's test. But at the end of the day, please keep in mind that this is going to be a joint effort. And as long as you do what you're supposed to do, I have no problem curving the test tomorrow. We're not in official content yet for modern, so that makes things easier. But as long as you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you should do fine on tomorrow's test. But I am more than willing and more than happy to curve the test tomorrow as well. We just need to get moving because we got to get into writing week, and we got to start content in week 6, which is your Byzantine and Kievan notes, which I had you pick up on Friday. If you remember, on Friday morning, we weren't sure if this storm was going to hit us or not. Come across the state and get us, which is what a lot of the experts anticipated. So I, in a panic, which like most of you, I went to school Friday morning and put out those assignments. So this week you should be working on Americas, India, and China in case we were hit with a direct hit. Or if the storm came across the state to come after us. That's why I passed out your Byzantine and Kievan notes in case we were out of school for much longer than a couple of days. So anyway, all right, let's get to it then. Everyone should have their notebook out. While I'm going through your lecture, you should be thinking along with me and not just writing things down. Just think with me, listen to the stories just like we do in class, and you should be fine. Now keep in mind you do have a test on Wednesday. As long as everything's okay, then we have school tomorrow, which I really do believe we will have. And so let's do it then. All right, so on Thursday I got to the end of the Han Dynasty. The end of the Han Dynasty ended with a guy named Mang who tried to do land redistribution because there was such a huge wealth gap. A huge wealth gap means there's a huge gap between the wealthy and the poor, and this happens throughout history in every civilization. Here in the United States, we have a wealth gap as well, and the larger the wealth gap is, eventually people will try to rebel and fight and overthrow. With the largest wealth gaps in the world, we have people to rebel. So Wang Mang tries to redistribute the land to make everyone happy. It doesn't work because of poor government implementation. So the government messed up the distribution of the land, and the rich people were pissed because their land was stolen from them. The poor people were pissed because they didn't get the land that was promised to them. And eventually your boy Wang Mang dies because he is murdered. And then once Wang Mang dies, the Han is incredibly weak. And then eventually the Han will officially collapse under the yellow turban. So that is the final nail in the Han's coffin. Now the Han are very important, as we've discussed. The Han are the foundation of the Silk Road. They are the ones who invent silk, and they're the ones who are going to start trading with the Romans and facilitating worldwide trade. So they're a big deal. So, all right, let's head to India. So let's put the heading of India on the top of your notes, and we're going to start with the Mauryan. So India is where we're heading. Okay, so for the Mauryan, you need to know that the Mauryan is going to come after Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great comes to the cusp of India and his men mutiny or fight back and say, we're too tired, we're not going any further. And this is going to cause a political vacuum in India. So they come in, they conquer a ton of it, and then they just suddenly leave, which causes a huge problem. So what you need to know about pre-Mauryan is that it starts, the Mauryan rise into power post-Alexander the Great. Now, the first major kingdom post-Alexander the Great is the Magadha. Now, the Magadha are going to unify northern India and fight. Now, from the kingdom of Magadha, you have a guy named Chandragupta Maurya. Now, Chandragupta's name is at the very top of the page. Please look at the spelling. You see Chandragupta is one word, space, Maurya. It is very important that you understand the difference. The Maurya is going to be the name of the empire. So Chandragupta Maurya, he is going to overthrow the Magadha rulers and become the first unified Indian emperor. You need to know that. So Chandragupta Maurya is going to overthrow the Magadha and create the first unified Indian emperor. Now, you are more than welcome to pause this video, rewind this video, go back, go forward, whatever you need to do in order to be successful. So this lecture is going to be probably a little faster paced than what would be in class because I can't see how long it takes you to write this down. So at any time, you're more than welcome to pause and go. So Chandragupta Maurya, he's going to overthrow the Magadha rulers, and he's going to become the first unified Indian ruler, and he's going to create the Mauryan Dynasty. So I would then skip a space and I would write Mauryan Dynasty founded by Chandragupta Maurya. Now, you need to know that Chandragupta has an advisor named Cautula, which is right at the top, Cautalya. He is going to write down all of the political laws they follow, political ideology, essentially, in a book called Arthashastra, which is spelled Arthashastra. So, Cautula is going to be Chandragupta's advisor and Chandragupta Maurya's advisor, and they are going to write a political book that will be the foundation of Indian culture and Indian laws called Arthashastra. Okay, so in this, they're also going to use, in their government, they're also going to use networks of spies. As you can see, the Indians are directly influenced by the Persians. Now, the Persians are the only ones so far that we've had a spy ring in order to regulate their government. Well, the Indians are going to take advantage of that. Keep in mind, the Persians conquer a good part of South Asia, which is where India is located. So because of that, they are exposed to Persian government, and because of that, they're going to implement some aspects of Persian government, which is pretty cool. So make sure you understand that. Now, Chandragupta is going to rise into power, become the first unified leader, as we already said, becomes incredibly famous, incredibly powerful, and then he retires to become a monk. Okay, he's a huge, he becomes a monk, he follows Buddhism, and he's going to starve himself to death, and that's how he dies. So, Chandragupta, first one to lead a unified Indian empire. He is going to use spies. He has an advisor named Cautula. He writes a book along with his advisor Cautula, Arithashastra, and he gives it all up in order to be a monk. So there's Chandragupta. Now, your second major leader is Ashoka Maurya, and you need to know him. He's a very big deal. So Ashoka is the grandson of Chandragupta, which you should know. You don't need to know everything about it, but you should know. You need to know that he unifies all of India except for the very southern tip. The very southern tip of India is only going to be conquered twice. once by a guy later on, and then once by the British. So the southern tip of India is going to be very, very devout Hindu, and they fight like hell. So very few empires, only 2 empires in the history of India conquered, so it's very rare. So Ashoka is going to spread the Mauryan Empire. He's going to conquer everything except for the southern tip. He is going to he's going to be known as a amazing emperor. He is an incredible ruler, very kind and passionate. Now he is going to be incredibly well liked by his people. Now, after he dies, there's chaos. After he dies, he spent so much money on his bureaucracy, or his government had too many people, and it bankrupted the state. You do need to know that. So the bureaucracy was too expensive. And another weird thing that you do need to know is that the military of Ashoka, which conquered all this territory, is not tax funded. Unlike here in the United States, I pay tax money, and so does your parents, to the U.S. government, and I think like for every dollar I spend, 35 cents go to the U.S. military. I'm not sure exactly on those numbers, but I'm pretty sure they're pretty close. With that being said, none of their tax revenue was going to the military, so it became quite the burden of the state to pay for it without using tax dollars, which is obviously going to bankrupt the state. So eventually, because of the high cost of the bureaucracy, the government was too expensive to run, and the fact that they weren't even using the government's funding, the tax money to pay for the military, you're going to see that it disappears. So Mauryan die out. 2 major leaders. Chandragupta Maurya is the founder, dies a monk, and then you have Ashoka. Okay, now, as in with every time, you're going to put a big star down on your paper. Every time an empire rises in India, it shatters into thousands of empires. Okay, so on your notes, you should write that every time an empire rises in India, it shatters to thousands of empires. And you're going to see this time and time again. So one emperor is going to unify and make this huge empire in India, like Ashoka. And then after the empire collapses, it shatters back into tons of tiny, tiny little kingdoms. So when we talk about the kingdoms, we are looking at the next one is going to be Bactria. Bactria is in India, and it's ruled by it's going to continue to be ruled by Greek-speaking descendants of Alexander's generals. You need to know that. And it's a big deal for trade. It facilitates a ton of trade, of course, back to the Mediterranean Sea, which is where these people are coming from. So Bactria, you need to know they are still affiliated with Alexander the Great, and you need to know that they are a major trade. Then you have the Kingdom of Kush. You need to know the Kingdom of Kush is facilitating the Silk Road. The Silk Road at this point of time is connecting the Han to the Romans, and they are moving goods across Asia. So the Kush, they're facilitating the Silk Road, and you need to know that, and that's moving trade between Rome to China. Okay, next one is the Gupta. This one's going to have a lot more. Okay, so the Gupta, center it, skip a space, center it, here we go. So the Gupta is founded by Chandragupta. Okay, now if you remember, it was Chandragupta was one word, Mauryan is his last name, as you can see down here, Chandragupta Mauryan. Now we just have Chandra space Gupta. They're not related, they're kind of tricky names, so please make sure you are distinguishing Chandra space Gupta versus Chandragupta space Mauryan. Okay, so Mauryan is Mauryan Dynasty, Gupta is Gupta Dynasty. So Chandra space Gupta is going to be a founder of the Gupta Dynasty. The Gupta Dynasty is smaller than the Mauryan. You don't need to write that down. However, it's decentralized, which means you have independent leaders unified under one emperor. Okay, so you need to know that the Gupta are known for its math and science. They are going to advance the world significantly in math and science. Okay, so Chandragupta is going to be the founder of the Gupta. You need to know it is decentralized, highly decentralized, and that they are advanced in math and science. Now, the Gupta are going to collapse because of the White Huns. The White Huns are not the Huns that go after Mulan. They're located just north of India, so it's not like this crazy wild thing. It's not like they're coming all the way from China. They're not. They're the White Huns. Those are the Huns. You're also going to see that they're eventually just going to completely collapse. All right, so the Gupta. So the Gupta rise under Chandragupta. They are known for their math and science. They're decentralized, and then they collapse because of the White Huns. Perfect. So when we're talking about India, there's a couple things you do need to know. That the economy-wise, you need to know that manufactured goods are in big demand. Manufactured goods are not like what we're talking about during modern-day times or industrialized time. There's no factories. It's just raw materials that have been finished. So for instance, like cinnamon is one of the largest exports coming out of India. Cinnamon, when it's on the bark of a tree, which is what it is, cinnamon is a bark of a tree, it's not a finished product. But when you take it off of the tree and you treat it, because they have to do something to it, I think they cook it, and that's how we get actual cinnamon. So that processing of cooking it and then grinding it down to make what we think of as cinnamon, that's manufacturing during this time period. So it's not like you have factories pushing smoke into the air or anything like that. It's just the finished goods. Okay, so you do need to know that India is going to be a major trade location for spices. Spices are going to be the major trading item in India, and you need to be aware of that. Now, trade is going to be a huge part of Indian growth, and it will continue. We're going to see that these trade routes have obviously started with the Persians, continued under Alexander the Great, and now we have the Silk Roads going. So it started with Persia, then went to Alexander the Great, and now we have the Silk Roads, which are connecting India, China, and the Mediterranean Sea with a high demand of goods. Now, in the Indian Ocean Basin, we are going to start the discovery of the trade winds, and which is a huge deal. You need to know that there are specific seasonal winds that blow, and these are going to allow, for the first time, the Indian Ocean Basin to be traversed or sailed around. So the seasonal sea trade is going to expand. So we have the Indian Ocean Basin is now going to be used for sailing. So you need to know, because of discovery of monsoon winds, MONSOON, monsoon winds were discovered, which opens up the Indian Ocean Basin for trade. Now, you need to know that the monsoon winds from spring to summer, from spring to winter, blow from the southwest, and the fall and winter blow from the northwest. So you do need to know that. So please write this down right here. So monsoon winds, MONSOON, open up the Indian Ocean Basin for trade. So now all of a sudden, Africa, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and China all can trade with each other along the water. Not just land routes, but also sea routes. What are the perks to sea routes? Sea routes allow ships, and ships can carry a lot of items with very little effort. So when we talk about Indian Ocean Basin trade opening, all of a sudden there's way more items being able to be sold. Keep in mind, if you do like a caravan and you cross the land if you cross territory by land, you can only carry so many items, and you're limited on how much you can carry. So Indian Ocean Basin monsoon winds are discovered. It's actually discovered by the Gupta, and you should know that. The Gupta discovered monsoon winds, and it opens the Indian Ocean Basin for trade. Okay? No one is going to be surprised, but India is super patriarchal. You do need to be aware that child marriage is super, super common. Okay, 8-year-old girls are married to men in their 20s. Yeah, if you're disgusted, you should be. So we're going to see that. You should be aware that the caste system is fully implemented. Of course, you see here on the screen, you have a list of your caste system. You should be familiar with this. The caste system is the most rigid social structure in the world. It keeps all of Indian culture organized by caste. The caste is a reflection of the Hinduism, which implements it. Now, in the caste, you obviously have Jati, which is your subcaste, which you should already be aware of. Just be aware. Okay. We're going to see that in India, you're going to start seeing different religions having different influences. Okay, all of a sudden in India, we have people challenging Hinduism. Excuse me, I've got the hiccups all of a sudden. Okay, Hinduism is going to be challenged by Jainism and Buddhists, okay, who are going to challenge the status quo of this. Now, Jainism, which you do need to write, skip a space, write a big title called Jainism. It is a belief system, so it is not a religion, but a belief system. And it is created by Vardhama Mahavira, okay? And you need to know that it is a complete rejection of wealth. It's also, so you need to know Jainism is a complete rejection of wealth. It is also an extreme nonviolence. Now, Jainism, people who are Jainists, they walk around with brooms, feather brooms, in front of their feet as they walk to make sure they don't crush any animals, like bugs or anything. They believe everything has value and everything has importance. So Jainists are extremely nonviolent. They walk with feather brooms in front of them so they don't step on anything. They strain their water multiple times to make sure there's no bugs in it. Because they don't want to kill anything. Now, in Jainism, Ahimsa is what we call extreme nonviolence, which is what Jainists do. Ahimsa is extreme nonviolence. You do need to know that term. It'll eventually have an impact on major leaders like Gandhi and Martin Luther King, who will use Ahimsa to justify the nonviolence to fight against the British or fight for civil rights here in the United States. So it's pretty cool. Now, Jainism, you do need to know that there's an appeal for it because it rejects the caste. So Jainists do attract people because it rejects the caste system, but it's not very popular because it's super extreme. Yeah, I mean, do you want to walk with a broom in front of you at every moment so you don't kill a bug? No, I mean, I don't want to kill bugs on purpose, but like I really don't want to do it all the time. So you do need to know that Jainists reject the caste, so that attracts followers, but it also is going to be too extreme, so not many people are going to follow it. Now, Buddhism is your next major religion. Buddhism is going to be super popular. Now, we talked about Confucianism last week. Now we have a new religion called Buddhism. So skip a space and center it. Buddhism is started by a guy named Siddhartha Gautama. Okay, so Siddhartha is going to be a pretty wealthy dude, and he's going to reject it to become a monk. So you do need to know that he was wealthy and became a monk. Okay, so what he does is that he does intense meditation. So he sits under a tree for like I think 3 years or something, 49 days. He sits under a tree in meditation until he reaches enlightenment. Okay, so you need to know that he sits under a tree for 49 days to achieve enlightenment. Now keep in mind, he doesn't eat, he doesn't drink, he's just in straight up prayer and meditation. And then he earns the title of Buddha or Enlightened One. So Siddhartha Gautama is Buddha. Buddha is the Enlightened One. And he earns it by sitting under a tree for 49 days in meditation and learning the ways of the universe. Now, Buddha or Siddhartha is going to start teaching his new doctrine, okay? And what he's going to do is that he only allows his followers to own one robe and one bowl for food. That's it. So as you can see, it rejects wealth, okay? They wander, beg, and meditate, okay, for food. and for enlightenment, and they create monasteries throughout India. Now, so Buddhism is about achieving enlightenment, and enlightenment is achieved through sacrifice as well as through prayer, meditation. Now, the doctrine is called the Dharma. So these are the rules of Buddhism. There's two major sets of rules you need to know. So for Buddhism, you need to know it started by Siddhartha Gautama. You need to know he sits under a tree for 49 days in order to achieve enlightenment and then gets called Buddha from it. Then you need to know the Dharma. The Dharma is made up of two segments. The first one is the Four Noble Truths. Okay? You don't need to memorize the Four Noble Truths, but you need to know the first group is called the Four Noble Truths. And it's all life is suffering. There is an end to suffering. Removing desires, remove suffering. And this may be done through the Eightfold Path. So, not a very optimistic way to see, but by eliminating the negative components and by only seeing the positive, you eliminate all pain, which is what they go for, which is pretty cool. So the Dharma is the Four Noble Path, Four Noble Truths, which are the rules essentially. And then how you achieve it is called the Eightfold Path, and you do need to know that. So the Dharma is the Four Noble Truths. It's the rules of Buddhism. Then they have the Eightfold Path, which is how you achieve enlightenment. So it's the actual ways to achieve it, which is pretty cool, and you do need to know both. So the Eightfold Path is how you achieve it, and the rules are the Four Noble Truths. Now, this is going to be incredibly popular. It is super popular because, A, it rejects the caste, so anyone who's not a Brahmin is down for it because anyone can be of someone importance. You can see that it is a rejection of wealth and class. So if you're wealthy, you have to give up wealth. If you have no wealth, you're in a good spot. So you can see that. You can also see that it is people can serve their community by practicing Buddhism and participating in Buddhism, so people are interested in that. And you also need to know that it uses the vernacular of the people. So it is very user-friendly. People enjoy it, and people flock to it in huge ways, in major ways. So the appeal of Buddhism, you need to know it rejects the caste. You need to know it rejects money, which is a big deal. And you need to know that monasteries attract lots of people. Monasteries are going to be the center of Indian culture for a very long time. And these monasteries are going to attract more and more people to them. So Siddhartha Gautama creates Buddhism, creates the Dharma, which is the Four Noble Truths. How do you achieve this? Through the Eightfold Path. Well, your boy Ashoka, who is Mauryan, of course, Ashoka Mauryan, is going to convert to Buddhism, and he is going to practice Buddhism. And once he converts to Buddhism, he actually bans eating of animals. Now, Buddhists don't eat animals today, and the reason is because of Ashoka and his support of Buddhism. So it's pretty funny. If you're a Buddhist and you don't eat animals, you're a vegan. It's because of Ashoka, which is pretty cool. You're also going to see that Ashoka is forcing everyone to turn to vegetarianism and no longer eating meat, or specifically beef, is also going to have an impact on the Hindus. Now, just because Buddhism is super popular in India does not mean that Hinduism is now no longer popular, because that's not true at all. Hinduism is the most popular religion in India in 2019, so of course it's incredibly popular today. Keep in mind, all of these religions, Jainism, Buddhism, are going to pop up in order to challenge the caste system, because if you're a lower caste, you're miserable. So, of course, Buddhism will evolve and get spread throughout the rest of the world, which is a very big deal. And we will see. As you can see, I'm kind of editing some of this because you don't need to know everything anymore. Perfect. All right, so that's pretty much all you need to know for India. You need to know that Buddhism is created in India, and it is going to attract lots and lots of people to it because of its rejection of the caste. It's also, it's about your own it's your own exploration into your meditation and your own thoughts, which is pretty cool. All right, skip a space, center it. Here we go. Early Mesoamerican societies. Now, in your focus and on your pieces, you're going to see a lot of Mesoamerican society stuff. A lot of this stuff is very similar to the first time we covered it. I just want you to know they continue to exist and they continue to occur. The reason why it's the same is because these people don't have that much food. Remember, they don't have any animals of beasts of burden, so they have to do all of the work themselves. Because they have to do all the work themselves, they don't have a ton of extra food. If you don't have a ton of extra food, you don't really have the strength to go fight and conquer other territories. So keep that in mind, which is why most of these empires are very similar to the first time around. Okay, so as you know, we talked about how our Mesoamericans are coming across the land bridge from Alaska. The Olmecs are your first major group of people. They're known as the rubber people because they planted lots of trees. You shouldn't really have that many notes on this, but it is on your study guide and all that stuff, so just on your pieces. So just be aware. The Olmec heads are curved. They obviously have to be religious because it's so much effort to make these 1,000-pound to 20-ton statues. They don't have any animals, draft animals or beasts of burden in the Americas, which means everything has to be done by hand. Okay, the Olmecs are going to use conscripted labor. Now, as a reminder, conscripted labor is when you, instead of paying taxes to the government, you work off your debt. So instead of me writing a check for $1,500 on April 14th, I would work 2 weeks for the government doing whatever they need, digging ditches, cleaning up trash, whatever they needed. We know the Olmecs die out. We don't know why, but they disappear. So the Mayans are next. They're your second major civilization. This should all sound very familiar because we have gone over this, guys. They do terraced farming, which is like the steps into heaven. They use chocolate as their currency because it's very valuable. They do a ritual sacrifice or bloodletting where they kill their enemies in order to satisfy their gods, which we're going to see that's a very American thing to do. The Mayans create a very complex calendar, the most accurate calendar until the 1800s. You're going to see that they do invent the number 0, which allows them to have accurate numbers, which is the first place in the world to do it. The Mayans do not have a written language, but they have a written language, but it's not used to record traditional things like culture, government, social. It's only used for tracking the gods. So it's not very informational for us historians. T-City is what I call this place. It is a major trading city. It is going to be the hub of all of your economy in Central America. It has an extensive trading network, and it shows that we have people trading with the Mayans in Mexico, with North American tribes up in the central, like Mississippi, Arkansas, are trading. So it's pretty extensive, all the way down to like Peru with the Incans. Now, we are going to talk about a new civilization called the Andean civilizations. They're mostly in the mountains, which is what is a big deal. So skip a space, center it, Andeans. Your first one is, of course, the Chavín, which we've talked about. They are the ones with the cult. Okay, they worship maize because it's so important. Corn is the most important crop in the Americas because it allows for it's the largest grain that they grow. However, as we talked about, it has very little nutrition, which means they're not very healthy people. The Mochica State is your next one. Just know that it exists. There you go, guys. And that's the Americas. You've already covered that information. Feel free to look at your focus. I've already handed that back to you to study for your week 1 test. So please take a look at that. If you have any questions, we'll talk about it at the beginning of class tomorrow because I'm anticipating us being together tomorrow, which I'm grateful for. So please keep in mind, if I went too fast, stop, rewind, go back, figure out what you need. And so, yeah. So tomorrow we have a test, 20 25 questions, all multiple choice on the Americas, India and China. Of course, most of your test is on India and China, so please make sure you are looking at that. I believe there's like 5 questions on the Americas. That test will be curved because we aren't together today, so please keep that in mind, that I'm trying to set you up for as much success as possible, but the more we keep going, the better we are. So week 5 is writing week. So you're going to learn how to write your short essays next week. So we really need to make sure we're together and get back on track. So stop doing your rain dances. Anyway, all right, guys. Well, I hope you have a great rest of your day. I know I have a nap in my future. I hope you have a nap in your future. Have a good day, guys. See ya.